Welcome, my name is Marius. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we create mind maps in MindLiner and how we expand those mind maps either globally or selectively in areas of interest. We're also talking about how we assign color to a map node and how we define the information that's actually shown on a map node. To create a new mind map in MindLiner, I typically start with a text search. You may notice that the configuration layout I'm using here is slightly different than in my previous tutorials. For example, the search box is inserted into the left toolbar and not at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like one or the other configuration better, please contact your MindLiner administrator or us, and we can make that configuration change for you. Let me review this spring webinar series with you. So that's something I'd like to have more information. I'm using my MindLiner database here, so I can do a search in what we've done in spring, and I would search for webinar and spring, for example, and I get this spring webinar plan. That's now the node, that's the search hit with which I'd like to build a mind map. And the way I do it is either I click on this button or I use the V key on the keyboard. Let me click on the button and we expand now the root node and its immediate first level relatives. Now, one thing I'd like to point out at this stage is that when we talk about the mind map, we can talk about parent nodes and child nodes and grandchild nodes, etc. Because the mind map now has a hierarchy. It has a clear hierarchy from the root towards the periphery. However, if we talk about the MindLiner objects themselves and how they relate to each other and how the objects are linked up, there is no hierarchy. So there is just a link between two objects. It's either bidirectional or unidirectional, but it's never hierarchic. So when I talk about MindLiner objects and how they're linked, I use the term relatives. When I talk about different nodes in a mind map, I may use the word child or parent, but child and parent is not something that MindLiner itself would know. It's a term that belongs to the mind map view. So what we see is now the first level child nodes that we get here, and what you need to know is when MindLiner builds this map, it uses the same search settings that it also uses for finding information in a text search. That means if you'd like to see expired nodes as well, you need to check the expired button, and then to rebuild the map that we're looking at, you can just select the root node again and hit the V key again, and you may see, yes, for example, this task, create and publish spring webinar plan, has been completed, and therefore it is only showing when I also include expired objects. If I switch that off and rebuild the map, this task is now gone. And that's the case for all other search settings. Please refer to the specific seminar on searching for a review of all the options that you have at your disposal. So now let's see, we want to browse the information that's linked up to this spring webinar plan, webinar getting started, and either I can now expand the map view by one level, so we go from level 2 to 3, so I click 3, and you see now that I can zoom out. You see that we get a third level with some of the objects, and we can go to 4, and then I have to zoom out a bit more, so we now go down to level 4. That would be what I call a global map expansion, because all the nodes that do have further relatives are expanded. So let's go back to 2. The other way of expanding a map, especially larger maps, it may be may make more sense to just expand specific nodes. So then you could click on one, webinars. If you double click on that, it will expand only this node. the alternative is you select one node and use the right arrow key on your keyboard. You can also use up and down arrow keys to navigate quickly with keys in your map. And whenever you use the right arrow on a node that has children, like this one, it will automatically expand and show the children. So that's quite handy. So we can go on now in synchronization. Maybe we have additional nodes. Yes, we do. Now we need to zoom out a bit. And you see you can actually horizontally expand your maps as long as you need to. User training, let's see what's in there. Okay, document security, let's see what's in there. Okay, we get more information and more information. And that's a way where you can horizontally search for what you're actually looking for. Let's assume that we found what we were looking for. Yes, I was actually looking for security and confidentiality information, and I just remembered vaguely that we incorporated that into a Spring webinar series, but that's actually what I need. So now you can do the following. You can use the V key on the selected node to make that node the new root of a new mind map. Another function that you might find handy is you can use the space key to expand or collapse the selected map node. Now, to finish up this short presentation, I'd like to show you how you can colorize maps. There is a series of color drivers, as I call them, that you can use. For example, the level color driver will just use colors depending on the level. So you see that we have the root node is black, the first level is black, second level is red, third level is blue, fourth level is green, and so on. So the color is just referring to the level. Sometimes it's useful because, as you can see, especially with long text, you may have nodes that actually are level 2 node but actually reach into the level 3 domain. So it's kind of nice to see, okay, it's still level 2. Then the second one is modification H. That because we haven't modified any one of those nodes, let's just add one here. Let's say client account authorization. We make a new node, which obviously is a new modification. So you see the modified nodes are now shown in red. The other map nodes are shown in black. Just quickly, how you change that, you can go to Edit Preferences, and then in Preferences you can go to the color sub-tab and use modification H. You can choose the color for an in-range or an out-of-range node. In-range would be those that were modified within a certain time period, and then you can specify the period in hours here. I use 2 hours, so everything that I changed in the last 2 hours I want red, everything else I want black. The color driver then will just pick up what you've defined here. So you would save, and that will be your setting. Because I've done that already, I can use it directly. Then we have an owner color driver. Again, it's defined in the preferences in the color tab for every owner or every of your colleague users in your setup. You can assign a certain color, and then you will see who created what directly here. That's quite handy. Then we have a category. Category means that, for example, if this was, it's now a fact, therefore it's black. If I make it a thought, it will actually get a different color. And also those settings are in the color driver tab for categories. Then we have confidentiality. This is if you're using different access levels, such as a team or management, then we can change the access level. If I make it directors, it will turn red. If I make it belong to management, it's blue, and team is black. That's how I set it up. If some of the configurations do not care about the access level, so if depending on your setup, you may not even have this option, and you may not even need to care about. And then the rating, this is MindLiner rates the objects based on their linking and based on other factors. And so again, I would have a range from black to red. Highly rated objects are more on the red side, and less highly rated objects are more on the black side. So that's the color drivers. Then another factor that is important, if we go into the preferences again and then onto the mind map tab, you have a bunch of options to define what you actually want to see. So here I say I'd like to see a description. So if your MindLiner object has a description, I want to see it in the map. I want the node type icon, I want to see some attributes. I don't need the child count indicator, and I don't need the description indicator. If you don't want descriptions, the full descriptions, you can just have a description indicator, but you would not use them together. Again, either you use node type icons or node type strings, but probably not both. And there is a bunch of other settings, such as the background color, or whether you want to use an image as a background, and then what image that would be. So these are the settings that you can use. And you also notice that if I use the description, now I'd like to point out something else, because I just see it here. You can move these nodes manually if you need them in another place. It's also used to actually relink. We will look at that in a separate seminar, how we link and unlink. But just if you happen to move an object and you don't want to relink it, don't drop it on any of these objects, put it somewhere else. And then to return to the automatic map build or automatic node positioning, you would hit the P key on your keyboard and say yes to that question, and then it will go back to automatic positioning. P, okay. And then the nodes won't overlap. So what I wanted to show you is, if you have the description activated here, it will actually go away for zooms below 1. So if you start to zoom out, it won't show. It only shows for zooms 1 or higher. If your zoom level is below 1, it won't show. The zoom level normally shows on the toolbar here. It's just because I use a relatively small screen here for this video take. I have no space for the zoom level. Normally you would see it. Alright, so this concludes the quick presentation on building map nodes. Also have a look at the options that you get in the context sensitive menu. They're pretty self-explanatory. Thanks for watching this tutorial.